For most of my life, I believed true strength meant doing everything alone. I cherished that independence. But looking back, I realized that stubborn pride was a profound mistake, one I deeply regret. I was always the one fixing the leaky faucet, tending my expansive garden, or baking for the whole neighborhood. My mantra was, I can do it myself, and I wore that independence like a badge of honor. I rarely asked for a hand, even when lifting heavy bags of groceries or battling a stubborn weed. I prided myself on my self-reliance, believing it was the only way to truly live. Just last year, I remember battling a jar of pickles in the kitchen. My fingers ached, my wrist protested, but I wouldn't give in. It's just a little tight, I told myself, grimacing. After a minute of gritting my teeth, the lid finally twisted open with a pop. I won, but my arm throbbed for an hour, and a quiet exhaustion settled over me. I brushed it off, of course. Just a momentary weakness, I thought. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to mention. It happened one quiet afternoon. I was walking down the hallway, on my way to fetch a book from the shelf. A simple, everyday stroll I'd taken countless times. There was a small, worn rug by the bathroom door, one I'd meant to secure but never quite got around to. My foot caught, just slightly, enough to send my balance spiraling. It wasn't a dramatic tumble, no flailing arms or loud cries. It was a silent, sickening lurch, a slow-motion descent that ended with a jarring thud on the hardwood floor. My hip took the brunt of it, sending a sharp, unwelcome jolt through my body. But my first thought, even before the ache fully registered, wasn't, ouch, or help me. It was a whisper of dread, cold and immediate. Oh no, not this. I can't let anyone know. Lying there, sprawled awkwardly, the silence of the house pressed in around me. My hip throbbed, a dull, persistent ache that grew with every passing second. But the pain in my chest was sharper, the fear of being discovered, of having to admit weakness. The phone was on the small table in the living room, just out of reach. I could call Mark, my son. He'd be here in minutes, I knew that. But the thought brought a fresh wave of shame, a heavy, suffocating guilt. He's so busy, he has his own life. I can't bother him with this. My pride, that stubborn, unyielding companion, was a heavy cloak, weighing me down even as my body screamed for assistance. The minutes stretched, each one an agonizing battle between the need for help and the deep-seated refusal to ask for it. It was a loneliness unlike any other, lying there, choosing to suffer in silence rather than admit I wasn't as strong as I pretended to be. Finally, the physical discomfort grew too intense to ignore, overriding even my stubborn pride. With immense effort, gritting my teeth against the pain, I inched my way across the floor, my fingers stretching, straining, until they brushed against the cool plastic of my phone. I dialed Mark's number, my thumb trembling. My voice, when I finally forced the words out, was a thin, reedy thing I barely recognized, shaky with both pain and embarrassment. Mark? It's Mom. I've had a bit of a fall. And then, his voice. Calm, immediate, full of a concern that surprised me. Mom? Are you okay? I'm on my way. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Just hearing his calm response, devoid of any hint of annoyance or frustration, brought an unexpected wave of relief, physical and emotional. The tension that had gripped me for what felt like an eternity began to ease, a quiet tear escaping as the first glimmer of hope, and perhaps a touch of embarrassment, washed over me. Mark stayed for a while, making sure I was truly all right. He didn't hover or make me feel incompetent, which was my biggest fear. Instead, he quietly picked up the rug I'd tripped on, folded it, and put it away. Maybe we should get some non-slip strips for the other ones, Mom, he suggested, his voice gentle. Or a grab bar in the bathroom, just in case. There was no hint of annoyance, no sigh of inconvenience, only genuine concern. I watched him move around my living room, making small, thoughtful adjustments, and something shifted inside me. He wasn't burdened. He was simply caring for someone he loved. It was a warmth I hadn't expected, a quiet reassurance that made the shame I felt begin to recede. Later that night, as I lay in my own bed, the ache in my hip was a dull throb, but the ache in my heart was far more profound. I kept replaying Mark's calm voice, his gentle suggestions. The burden I had so feared imposing on him wasn't there. But the burden I had imposed on myself? That was immense. The minutes I lay on the floor, battling pain and panic, the shame of not wanting anyone to know, the intense fear of being truly alone in that moment, that was the heavy cost of my stubborn pride. I had believed that being strong meant never needing anyone, never admitting a weakness. But in those agonizing moments on the floor, I realized my definition of strength was actually a form of self-imprisonment. It had isolated me, making my struggle so much harder than it ever needed to be. If you're still watching this, perhaps you recognize a piece of yourself in my story. Are you too letting the fear of being a burden keep you from asking for the help you need? Are you bearing silent struggles that are far heavier than any inconvenience you might cause a loved one? I know it feels like strength to push through alone, but sometimes the greatest strength lies in vulnerability. It lies in reaching out and allowing others to show you their love and care. Ask yourself, are your silent battles truly serving you, or are they costing you more than you realize? After the fall, even before I truly understood Mark's reaction, I was living a life of quiet retreat. My days became a predictable loop of tending to the garden, reading by the window, and making my simple meals. I told myself I was independent, but the truth was, I was avoiding anything that felt like a challenge. The bus to the community center felt too far, the stairs at the library too steep. I remember a flyer for a seniors club, full of activities and laughter, sitting on my kitchen counter. When my neighbor asked if I'd go, I gave a vague answer about being too busy. The real reason? My pride wouldn't let me admit I needed a ride, or perhaps just a friendly face to walk in with. That wasn't the first time I'd built these self-imposed walls. I recall my grandson Liam had a small part in his school play a few years back. He was so excited, talking about it for weeks. The school was a bit of a drive, and I knew parking would be tricky. Mark offered to pick me up, but I brushed it off. "Oh, darling, you go. I wouldn't want to trouble you for something so small." But it wasn't small. I sat home that evening, a knot of sadness in my stomach, picturing his proud little face on stage, wishing I'd been there to cheer him on. I told myself I was being strong, independent, but all I felt was the sting of absence, the quiet ache of a memory I should have made. It's funny how sometimes you need to see someone else living differently to truly see yourself. One afternoon, I finally worked up the courage to go to the local cafe, somewhere I hadn't been in ages, and there she was, Beatrice. She's a few years younger than me, but not by much. She was laughing, surrounded by a group of friends, and I noticed a young woman, a volunteer perhaps, helping her gather her things. Beatrice moved with a slight limp, but her eyes sparkling, her smile was genuine. She wasn't hiding her need for a little assistance. She was embracing it, and in doing so, she seemed freer, more vibrant than I had felt in years. She wasn't doing everything alone, but she was living a full, active life. That day, watching Beatrice, a tiny seed of a new idea began to sprout in my mind. Perhaps true independence wasn't about solitary control, but about making choices that truly allowed you to live. I watched Beatrice that day at the community center, not with envy anymore, but with a dawning understanding. She was laughing, sharing stories, and when she needed to move a chair, a younger volunteer simply helped her, no fuss. Beatrice talked so openly about her part-time caregiver, who helped with groceries and heavier chores, and how her rideshare service ensured she never missed a club meeting or doctor's appointment. "It's not about being less independent, Elara," she'd told me. "It's about choosing to make my life easier so I can do more of what I love." I realized her independence wasn't diminished. It was enhanced by this network of support. She wasn't giving up control. She was strategically extending it. A few days later, Mark came over. He was just dropping by with some mail, but I saw an opportunity. My heaviest gardening books had been stacked precariously on a high shelf since I'd cleaned out the spare room, a task I knew I couldn't manage alone. "Mark," I started, feeling a familiar flush of awkwardness, "would you mind helping me move these books? They're a bit much for me." He didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mom. Why didn't you say something?" As we worked, a comfortable silence settled between us, broken only by casual conversation. He didn't make me feel like a burden. In fact, seeing him there, willingly helping, opened something up. "You know," he said, dusting his hands, "the community center is having a spring fair next Saturday. Beatrice mentioned you might enjoy it. I could take you if you'd like." It struck me then. Asking for help wasn't a loss of choice. It was a choice itself, a powerful one. It was choosing a richer, more connected life over a smaller, more isolated one. This made me wonder, for all of you out there, are your choices truly your own? Or is your pride, your fear of being a bother, quietly limiting your world? Are you making choices that expand your life? Or are you constructing a self-imposed prison, believing it's independence? Because true independence, I'm learning, isn't about doing everything alone. It's about having the freedom to choose how you live. And sometimes, that means choosing to reach out. When I first moved into this house, I loved the quiet. After years of a bustling life, the stillness felt like a reward. But as time went on, the quiet evenings started to feel less like peace and more like an emptiness that settled deep in my bones. The phone, once a constant companion, lay silent for hours, sometimes days. No spontaneous calls from friends just dropping by. No unexpected visits from family. I'd try to fill the void, reading books or watching television, but the stories on the screen only highlighted the one I wasn't living. The isolation wasn't loud. It was a soft, persistent hum, a quiet ache that whispered, "You are alone." I tried, I truly did. I kept myself busy, convinced that activity was the antidote to loneliness. My garden, once a cheerful hobby, became a meticulous chore. Each weed pulled a desperate attempt to feel useful. I spent hours on intricate crosswords, my mind sharp, yet my spirit felt dull. I cleaned my home with a fervor that would rival any spring cleaner, polishing surfaces until they gleamed. These tasks were productive, certainly. They kept my hands occupied and my house tidy. But I realized with a heavy heart that there's a profound difference between keeping busy and being truly connected. One fills your time, the other fills your soul, and my soul felt increasingly hollow. I remember sitting on a park bench one afternoon, watching families laugh, children chasing pigeons, and a group of women my age chatting animatedly over coffee. They leaned in, sharing secrets, their faces alight with genuine connection. It was a simple scene, yet it hit me with a force I hadn't expected. I felt like an outsider, pressing my nose against a window, watching a warmth I couldn't touch. A deep longing stirred within me, a wistful ache for that easy camaraderie, that shared laughter. It wasn't just about having someone to talk to. It was about being a part of something, of someone else's story. And in that moment, the quiet ache of my isolation became a loud, undeniable cry. I remember sitting there, the phone heavy in my hand. My finger hovered over Beatrice's number, or maybe I should just look up that community center schedule again, the one I'd dismissed so many times. My mind raced with all the familiar excuses. She's busy. They won't remember me. I'll just be a bother. But then, that familiar ache in my chest, the one that had become a constant companion in my quiet evenings, grew stronger. It was a silent scream for connection, louder than any fear. And in that moment I realized my pride was a far heavier burden than any conversation could ever be. I took a deep breath. It was time. The call was made, and an hour later, I was sitting across from Beatrice, a cup of warm tea between us. We talked for what felt like hours, sharing stories about our grandchildren, reminiscing about old neighborhood gossip, and just laughing. Real, unburdened laughter. It was like a tight knot in my chest had finally loosened. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed simply being seen, truly heard, by another person. The quiet lightness that settled over me was a comfort I hadn't felt in a long, long time. It wasn't just a conversation, it was a reawakening, a gentle reminder of the joy that flows when you finally open the door to genuine human connection. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 3 below to let me know you're here. Now, I ask you, what connections are you quietly neglecting? Are you telling yourself you're fine alone, when a part of you yearns for that shared laugh, that simple presence. Don't let pride or fear keep you from the medicine of human interaction. It's a vital part of staying vibrant and truly alive. Reaching out isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of powerful self-care. Before I started truly listening to my body, I was a master of rationalization. A little stiffness in my knees when I climbed the stairs. Just getting older, Elara. I'd tell myself, as if aging were a single, unavoidable descent into discomfort. A twinge in my back after an hour in the garden? Well, I earned that, I'd think, dismissing it as a badge of honor for my stubborn independence. I had an ache in my shoulder that would flare up every time I reached for something on a high shelf, but I never thought it was serious enough to bother a doctor or to ask anyone for help. It was just Pran body, quietly giving up, and I was determined to pretend I didn't notice. I pushed through, always, convincing myself that acknowledging the pain was somehow giving in. But my body wasn't just whispering anymore. Sometimes it tried to shout. I remember one sunny afternoon wrestling with a new bag of potting soil in my garden. It felt heavier than usual, and as I tried to heave it into my wheelbarrow, a sharp, searing pain shot through my lower back. My legs buckled for a moment, and I nearly went down, clutching at the edge of the wheelbarrow to steady myself. I stood there, breathing hard, not just from the exertion, but from a sudden wave of anger. Anger at my own body for betraying me, for not being as strong as I insisted it was, and fear, a cold, creeping fear that this was just the beginning of a faster decline. The incident left me feeling utterly vulnerable and surprisingly furious. It was shortly after that, sitting on my front porch, when my neighbor Leo walked by. He's a couple of years older than me, always out tending his immaculate rose bushes. We exchanged pleasantries, and he casually mentioned he was heading to his physical therapy appointment. "My knees have been acting up," he said with a shrug, "but these exercises keep me moving. Can't let them seize up completely, can we?" He even demonstrated a simple leg stretch right there on the sidewalk, laughing. I was surprised by his openness, by how naturally he talked about seeking help for his body. It wasn't a secret or a sign of weakness. It was just a practical part of his life. Watching him, a little seed of curiosity about professional help started to sprout in my mind. After my chat with Leo, I found myself thinking a lot about my own aches and stiffness. It wasn't just getting older, if there were things I could do about it. Making that first doctor's appointment felt like a monumental task, a confession of weakness I'd resisted for so long. My fingers hovered over the phone, my heart pounding a little. But then, a wave of something else washed over me. Not dread, but a strange sense of empowerment. I was taking control, not surrendering it. The doctor listened patiently, and the physical therapist was incredibly kind, giving me a clear plan, tailored just for me. It wasn't a judgment, it was guidance. For the first time, I felt hope for my body, not just resignation. My first few physical therapy sessions were, I admit, a little awkward. Some of the movements felt strange, and I was certainly stiff. There were moments I wanted to give up, to just say, "This is too much effort." But then I'd remember Leo, and I'd push through. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, I started to feel a difference. The stiffness began to ease. I could reach a bit higher, bend a little further. It wasn't about becoming a marathon runner. It was about regaining the strength I thought was lost forever. Consistent, guided movement with someone showing me the asterisk right way made all the difference. It felt like I was giving my body a voice, and it was telling a new story. If you're still watching this video and you're feeling those little aches, that growing stiffness, or even a quiet fear about what your body is telling you, please ask yourself, is pride silencing your body's vital messages? Are you dismissing pain or discomfort because you don't want to admit you need help? Listening to your body, seeking professional advice, and taking proactive steps for your physical well-being isn't a sign of weakness. It's a profound act of self-love. It's funny how a few simple words can change everything. Please help. I spent so many years avoiding them, seeing them as a sign of defeat. But since I started saying them, My life has become richer, more connected, and ironically, more genuinely independent than I ever thought possible. My home, once a quiet fortress, now feels like a warm hub. Mark comes over more often, not just to check on me, but to share a meal, to laugh. Beatrice and I have become inseparable, planning outings, sharing stories, supporting each other. My physical therapy hasn't just strengthened my body, it's rebuilt my confidence. I can walk further, lift things I thought were impossible, and I even joined a walking group at the community center. My world didn't shrink when I asked for help. It expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined. Looking back, my biggest regret wasn't asking for help sooner. I spent so much time believing that true strength meant doing everything alone, suffering in silence. But that's not strength, that's a self-imposed prison. The hard truths I've learned, that the fear of being a burden is a greater burden than asking for help. That independence isn't about solitary control, but about making choices, even the choice to lean on others. That connection is medicine, and isolation is poison. And that listening to your body means actively seeking support. These aren't just lessons, they're liberation. True strength, my friends, isn't about carrying every weight yourself. It's about knowing when to share the load, when to reach out, when to allow yourself to be cared for. It's a profound act of self-love, of cherishing the life you have, and empowering yourself to live it fully. Thank you so much for joining me today. I truly hope that sharing my journey, these hard-won lessons, has given you something valuable to consider. We're all in this together, and I believe we can learn so much from each other. So if you found these insights helpful, please take a moment to leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today, or perhaps one way you plan to start asking for help in your own life. Your experiences and thoughts are incredibly important to me and to our growing community here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Your support truly helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Before you go, let me leave you with this thought. What story will your body, your choices, and your connections tell today and for all the days to come? Choose to live it fully. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing your comments and connecting with you in our next video.